Okay, Sabrina and I are setting out, and we're gonna see. Sabrina and I are setting out to see what people think about environmental racism and its connection to environmental movements. We want to see if people even know what it really means and its relation to environmental injustice. It's a great day to ask people, so we're gonna go up to them and see what their perspectives are on the issue. Are you guys familiar with the concept of environmental racism?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
I am aware of the term environmental racism.
Do you know anything about environmental racism, what it means?
No.
Are you guys familiar with the term environmental racism?
Yeah. Yes.
It's okay if you're not.
Hi, yes, I am.
Yes. Yeah.
No. Heard of it recently.
No, what is that?
Antonio?
A little bit. Is it like kicking Native Americans off their land to build hydroelectric dams and shit?
No, I would only have a vague guess as to what it is.
Yes.
It's not as familiar as it probably should be, but I've heard it floating around more lately.
I think I know a little about it, but I don't think it's something that people discuss about it. It's definitely not a discourse at all.
Environmental racism, really?
Yeah, you've never heard of that term?
Nope, I've never heard that term. I can figure out what it has to deal with.
You are not the only person, so don't worry. Most people don't.
Yeah, so my first, I've only had like 2 real experiences with like environmental racism. And the first one was having a Nabisco factory right next to my middle school. And then the second was just dealing with food deserts.
Like the way New Orleans is, like there's the hood and then there's like the hood and like the hood like you can tell because it's like the streets are all whatever. And so there was this thing going on in New Orleans where like the water wasn't safe like to drink in, like it was barely safe to take a shower in, and the only areas that it affected was like deep downtown in New Orleans, which is mainly the hood, mainly where people of color are located. And the problem wasn't fixed for like a good, I want to say over a month. To me, that's pretty bad considering that it was contaminated water, and water is something that is a necessity, something that is very needed. However, like something like that, I feel like would have never happened in like uptown New Orleans or like the real like good like gated communities, stuff like that. Like something like that would never happen. It was really bad. I didn't go through it personally, but it was really bad.
Okay, so I live in the same neighborhood, but just on a different side. The side that I first lived on was closer to my middle school, so I was really close to like the Nabisco company. But that was what the food desert was. Like we had liquor stores. Like I knew where all the liquor stores were, but in those liquor stores they would like sell foods that like kids could cook. So like hot dogs, cereal, Twinkies, a lot of junk food. It was just like, it was food, but it wasn't like gonna prolong your life. It was just gonna feed you.
So it's like what these big companies try to do is like, they under the table, really not even under the table doing the stuff that they do. They like use stuff like child labor, for example, or like what in economics we call negative externalities like pollution or like garbage dumping. It's very obvious, like you know that they doing it, but then they try to like use like some of the benefits that they have, which sometimes are actually pretty good, but it's not enough. They use those as like cop-outs, so that way we as consumers, especially like people of color or people of a lower socioeconomic background, to be blinded and to actually think that these companies are just so great and they do so much, when really all they doing is just copping out for all the bad stuff they doing. Hanes, for example, yeah, they have like child labor all over the world, but like we look at like how in third world or in developing countries they give people the opportunity to get post-secondary education, or something like that. And we say, yeah, like, it's so great that they're doing that for those 20 people per year, and they have 60 children per factory, you know what I mean? And we just never think about it. I mean, we do think about that stuff, but we don't care about it because we think that they're doing so much great stuff when really it's not at all great, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Dill Avenue, Sylvan Road, Brewer. I used to live off Brewer, which was off Sylvan Road, and now I live on Metropolitan. And the difference is that Metro has like this one bus that goes up the whole strip, whereas like Sylvan Road, you have like this one bus that goes up the whole strip, but it comes like every hour, and it's harder to get to like different things. Like there are a lot of foreclosed houses, a lot of houses that like burned down, a lot of abandoned houses that nobody ever moved into for like 10 and 12 years. It's like they're both being gentrified, but one's being gentrified for like business, and the other's being gentrified just for like a new class of people moving in. You can tell by like the rent differences. You can tell by like so many things, and it's like, it's crazy how fast it's coming, and it's just like happening. Like, I never thought I would see my middle school rebuilt.
All of this comes down to questions of unequal use of resources, of problems with distribution and use of materials. The environment has been unequally pillaged by some groups, and for the benefit of those groups. The just thing for the planet would be to slow down, but unequal. All of the goods on the planet are distributed unequally. The amount of distributive injustice on the planet is nearly unfathomable.
Someone says the word racism, what pops into your mind?
Hate.
If you had to like sort of concoct a scenario in your mind, an implicit scenario.
Well, something that I immediately think of is a story I was actually talking about today, and how my grandmother, who is a black African-American woman, she was doing a census review, and she went to this house in Georgia where we live, and there was a Confederate flag flying, and the man said that I don't allow Negroes to come to my house, and if you have 5 seconds to get off my property or I will shoot you.
One day I was in Red Hook with some friends, and a white guy drove by, and he told us to go back to Africa, and I was like, wow. So racism, like that's like, I'm from a predominantly black neighborhood, so I haven't like experienced racism to that extent until like I got the bar. So, but I knew it existed. Like I was taught like that racism is something that exists, which is, it's just weird to be able to actually experience it first.
Like I never thought I would see my middle school rebuilt. And one thing that I did learn is that schools are like funded off of like property tax, and when you're like selling all of these old houses, because like the housing market over there is like shit. Like you can buy a house for like shit. Like it's not, because houses aren't worth anything. So like once you do that and you flip a house and then you start paying property tax on the house, you're like helping the neighborhood. So once they like kick all the people out who can't like pay rent and stuff, who aren't paying their property taxes, it goes to somebody who can pay the property tax, and then you like see changes in the neighborhood that you would never see like any other time because of the people who live there. You see what gentrification is doing.
I was hearing some other interviewers as well, and I think just a higher awareness of everything is happening lately, and in that way to hear that what the idea of environmental racism is just like things that could be happening to everyone but are really only just happening to people of color is more, unfortunately, believable.
Do you think it's strange that you've never heard of this term before?
Yes, I do think it's strange.
Like, why is it something that in your entire lifetime you've never heard, and why, even now with the emergence of like all these social justice movements, why is environmental racism still something that we haven't really been talking about?
Because they don't want to talk about it. It's not happening to them, it's happening to us.
Yeah.
You know, they just want to keep the rich living, and they don't care about us. Just the way I feel. We really shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But without us, they wouldn't have anything.
Whole Foods was like the white people place. Like everybody, if you were black, you knew churches. You knew why churches was good. You knew why it was bad. I wouldn't say that we had it, like we felt we had it better in a sense. Cause like everybody's like, what the fuck is kale? What the fuck is this? White people eat all this weird shit, and it was like that was a white people thing. When I was like really young, I used to say that McDonald's sold apples, so they're healthy, or like I have a Subway, so I can be healthy when I want to be healthy. Like if I want to go get a sandwich, like that's me being healthy. Cause I live like right across the street from McDonald's. I just know like churches, China cafeteria, McDonald's, Wendy's. Like I know that offhand. But like they come with like all this different knowledge of foods and like what's good for you, what's bad for you, what are you supposed to eat with this, how do you eat this, how can you cook this without like it being not healthy, what to mix with it, things of that sort. And it's like damn, like there are other ways to eat this type of food. And like I was taken there by like a friend's parent who was like going grocery shopping, and we just ended up going there, and it wasn't like a Whole Foods, it was like a fresh food market or something like that. Like everything every day was fresh, like they set out everything fresh. And she went there and she got like all these fruits, vegetables, meats, everything, and like she threw down, but it was like nothing was like high in cholesterol or high in sodium or anything like that. Like everything was like good for you. Nothing was like bad, like at all, but it all tasted good. And I think that's another like misconception when it comes to like where I'm from. Like if it's healthy, it doesn't taste good. And it's oof. That's like a big thing.
So environmental racism sort of fits within that framework of like, you know, like bigger corporations infiltrating already marginalized communities that are based on like the history of the United States, comprised of mainly people of color, and sort of like asserting that power to exploit the natural resources of those communities.
Oh, that's interesting. So I guess if they put that way, then yeah, I guess we are from an environment racism, but you know, like you said, I never thought about it in that framework.
So is the term environmental racism a gathering of a sort of assertion that you've had to make, or is it like a term that's explicitly you've been taught in either like a classroom setting in college or like in high school?
I definitely never talked about it or learned about it in a school or academic setting. Of course at Bard, like the term environmental racism came more like fluent to me in my vocabulary, but in terms of it being taught to me, not really. It's something I had contextualized just growing up, things that based on observations really. College just allowed me to put like a more eloquent term to it, I guess.
I think it's hard for a lot of people to conceptualize that it's a form of oppression they've literally been experiencing their entire lives, but it's not like a palpable form because no one's calling them like the N-word or something, but it's a very real like struggle. So can you like sort of speak on like how exactly we can like articulate to like the masses about like the effects of environmental policy and like how it impacts certain communities in certain fashions?
Well, I think it's like tough because like growing up, like living in New York City housing projects, like piss in the elevator, you know, like graffiti on the walls, which I don't really find that much of a problem with, you know, things like that, which if you go to like another area, you wouldn't see any of those things, or if there were some of those things, they would have been cleaned up in a timely manner. So you just think about, again, just being ignored and casted out. So I think one, you first need to bring attention to it because this is an issue that's not highly publicized or discussed, and it's only discussed when we have things like Flint, Michigan, where you have children dying from lead poisoning in their water and things like that. And even now, that's too late. So I think that, you know, you could use big cases like that to get people awareness about it, but then go to the little everyday things that people see in their communities, like the trash not being picked up on time, or, you know, there not being enough like trees built in certain communities and planted, in certain communities.